an immigrant is never an easy one. Oftentimes we leave things that we're familiar with, like family, friends, food, in search of bigger opportunities and pursuing the big dream. Join us today as we share the amazing stories of people who have made that kind of leap. Welcome to yet another interesting episode of Community Connect, where we get to share the amazing experiences of people doing great things in the community to connect and to find a way to make a difference. My name is Ruth Majid, and with me today is Naji and Max, his little son.
Hello.
And also Paulina. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Naji, so you moved with your family 5 years ago from Iran.
Yes.
And what has that experience been like for you?
It has been great. We moved to Canada 5 years ago. My son, he was 2 years old at that time, my wife, and recently we have a new addition to our family. Her name is Melody, and she's 11 months old now, and we are so happy and grateful to live in a free and safe country.
Right. And Max, so that means you are, how old are you?
I'm turning 7.
Oh, he's such a big boy. Can I ask, Max, is there something you would like to say about your being in Canada?
If I didn't come here, I wouldn't make friends. Like all I've been through with everybody and everyone that I've met or seen or played with, all of that wouldn't have happened if I didn't come to Canada.
So you're grateful for this experience to be in this country?
Yes.
He runs a YouTube channel with his dad, and it would be great to hear some of the things that he likes to share with the world. And Paulina, so Paulina, I know you moved from Tanzania 15 years ago, and you have a lot of experience in TV and media and advertising, and so what made you come to Victoria?
Well, I was working in Nairobi, and I fell in love with this Canadian man.
Oh, right.
And after traveling the world to various cities where the job took us, we ended up in Canada, Victoria. No regrets since.
Nice. And so you decided Canada is home?
It is my home. I would probably qualify that and say it's my second home.
Right. On today's episode of the show, we'll be talking about moments that count, moments of finding connection, and we'll be starting with Naji's story of the pin. I've heard you share that story, and each time I hear that story, it resonates with me, and I'm sure it would with a lot of immigrants and people who have had similar experiences as well.
There were some moments during the past 5 years that I proudly put the pin of being a Canadian on my jacket, and the pin is something that you put on your jacket when you are really proud of, when it's your honor. You feel that sense of connection. My story goes back to the time that I used a wrong word in a situation that was context of a ball. And in Iran we don't say we kick the ball, we shoot the ball. And I've heard that in England they use the same verb for kicking the ball. They say shoot the ball. And I told a person that I'm gonna shoot you or shoot to you. I can't remember what exactly I said, but I meant I kick the ball, I don't throw the ball with the hand. And she felt threatened. The moment that I was really kept me thinking about what's happening, kept me contemplating of her feeling and her understanding of the moment. I felt if I was Alex, if I was born in Edmonton or Calgary, and I used a wrong verb, she could have asked, what do you mean? And it could have been simple as just asking for clarification, and I could explain that. I don't throw the ball, I kick the ball with my feet. But it turned to be an unpleasant experience for her, which I really regretted. In that time, I felt that I'm not connected because I'm coming from another country, I'm coming from Middle East. I was misjudged by that verb that I used.
Was that just because of her reaction, or did that reaction lead to something bigger?
Yeah, I was invited to a meeting that I had to explain what I meant, and it was a serious meeting. I was not informed about the purpose of the meeting. I was not informed about the procedure, why I'm being invited to that meeting, which is kind of a question about the procedural fairness.
Right.
But it turned out to be a good experience, and
Okay.
I explained that I didn't mean to threat you, or that was just a footprint of my first language.
Just speaking to Paulina, situations like this, I know you work with refugees, you work with immigrants, and you probably have heard one or two similar stories.
For sure, it's definitely a problem that many newcomers face here, because we have to understand that there are barriers that we face in the community when we come here. I mean, I was an immigrant myself once. Luckily, I didn't have the language barrier, but if you do, there can be a lot of misunderstandings that can come about, that can cause us to be unfair in our judgments, not ask the question rather than prejudge based on where you come from. So a lot of the projects that we do, at least in the arts program that I help run, is to talk about such complexities.
Have you been in such a situation yourself?
I'll have to say that when I first came to Victoria, my biggest barrier was, for instance, finding a job.
Right.
So I felt that I was not necessarily always judged by my merits and what I had to offer and the value that I could bring. I was, first I was filtered through the lens that I was, from somewhere else. I spoke differently. I didn't have the right criteria for a job, without necessarily looking a little deeper and seeing maybe that I had something of value to add. And with time, I found a way to prove myself as a productive member of this community. But it takes quite a long time sometimes.
And the sad part is not everybody is able to make it to the other side.
No. Well, everyone has a different story.
Right.
I always say there's diversity within diversity.
Okay.
My journey to this place of arrival and integrating in this community is different for everybody else, But as you mentioned, employment is one of the biggest way that we feel that we can be productive members of this community. Many people and many immigrants that I've known have ended up in the beginning holding 3 or 4 jobs before they find their spot. Many people are overqualified for the jobs that they have.
Right.
There are countries like Germany, for instance, that have thought this through. At least you're thinking ahead, and have said, why don't we train him for free for 6 months to a year, and have him integrate and learn very quickly the health system in the country, so that he can start working and do good.
Exactly.
It's a win-win situation for all of us. We all benefit.
Naji, I know that in your case, you were able to get gainfully employed in the first 1 year. Do you want to share how that impacted your family settling down?
I think job is one of the main areas that you feel connected. That's part of the feeling of connection, and also you make money because you have some bills to pay.
Right.
So that's very important. But many doctors from Iran, that they are driving taxis, they are delivering pizzas, and that was a survey that it was done in Iran a few years ago. They calculated the cost of educating a person from the scratch to grade 12 at high school, and it was about $500,000 for the government to train that person from the scratch, and add to that the bachelor degree of the 4 years of study, or for doctorate 7 years. How much investment has been done on one person to become a professional, and then we just ignore that, or we don't utilize that resource. I'm very glad with the job that I could find here in Victoria, but I'm not contributing 100% of what I can. Perhaps the job that I'm doing is an entry-level job for a grade 12, or perhaps, when you look at the job qualification,
Right.
I think that I can contribute more, but there is a process. I understand that in order to be fair, they post a job, then everybody else, they put their resume forward, and then they have to compete against other competitors.
Right.
I understand that part, but the accreditation that you mentioned, and also transferring those experience and knowledge and investment to country that we love and we want to help to grow.
It's important because that's so on point. It's about changing the discourse.
Yes.
Around newcomers.
Yes.
Ourselves not to be perceived as burdens to society, as other of taking or just utilizing charity, right? So we stop perceiving refugees and immigrants as needy people, other people, people who are queue jumpers or people who
Are here to take.
Instead of looking at us as opportunities that we bring value, that yes, we're here to learn the ways and how Canada wants to operate and our responsibility as citizens, but also in turn to be looked at as people who have something to offer.
Right.
People that have something to share.
Talking about your job, for instance, it would be great if someone would sit down with you and say, what are the specific skills? Considering the fact that it's not just to help you build those skills or improve them, but also to add value to the organization. And yours is one of many stories like that. Yours is, you are even lucky. I was lucky to get an internship. You're lucky to have that job. There are people who would not even be able to get an interview just because their names are different.
These things are real. They're just barriers. This is barriers to employment. And Canada is a very great place to live.
Yes.
And it has pathways to belonging, And a lot of those pathways to belonging are volunteering, for instance.
Yes.
Joining groups like you did, being proactive like this.
Looking at why my motivation for doing things like this, for taking the time to reach out to people and connect is, I understand as an immigrant myself how tough it can be to find that sense of belonging. It definitely does begin with having the right conversations.
The reality, as you know, and you know, and I know, of settling into a new community is not an easy one. You leave communities that don't question who you are and what you have to offer, because there you don't stand out as other.
Naji, so I know that you moved with your family while Max was 2 years old. Are there opportunities around here that you think are enabling for him to become that person that you would like your son to grow up to be?
I think the main thing is that Max will grow up in a free country,
right,
with more freedom and having access to more resources.
That's a Canadian experience.
Yes,
Wow.
and as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, that I respect him a lot, he said, nothing is more Canadian than helping your neighbor or helping other people. These are the values that Canada and Canadians hold. Let's talk about what are the Canadian values.
Right.
The Canadian values is helping each other, is helping your neighbor, is collaborating, is teamwork, is respect, is fairness. These are the values.
Yeah, just being able to walk in the other person's shoes.
Yeah.
Even if people come in as the other, we should not leave them as the other. And that's the only way we can become richer. That's the only way we can become that great nation that the world looks upon this country to be. Thank you, Naji.
Yeah,
thank you for Paulina. Thank you so much. Thank you. And with that, we've come to the end of today's episode of the show. It's been an amazing time. It's been a great time hearing all of these experiences that you've had. Thank you so much for sharing your time. Thank you for watching. See you next time on the show.